What's up, everybody? I am Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune, joined by Dave Burkett of the Detroit Free Press. Dave, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dan. How are you?
I'm good. The last time that we talked was in week one. I was making my way out of the Ford Field press box, and I came down to say goodbye to you. And the Detroit Lions had pretty much dominated a football game for three quarters, blown a 17-point lead in the fourth quarter, and lost. And I just came over to you and said, I don't know how you cover this team.
It's been a long, it's been a decade, and I guess this is about to be my fourth head coach in that decade. So, look, I think way back then, we all sort of saw this coming. Really, even going back to last year, we sort of saw this coming, that the Lions were going to probably need to change, at least at coach and maybe at general manager too. And the way things have gone this year, it's really no surprise that they decided to make the change, and now it's just about, what comes next.
The situation is wayward here, and obviously folks in Chicago are antsy because this franchise has not won a playoff game since the 2010 season, and there's been a long
nothing on the Lions, right?
Well, that's what I was going to say, because in our lifetime, the Lions have won playoff victory, and I know for me, I was 15 years old. How old were you?
Yeah, I was about the same, I guess, right? 91, so that's exactly what I was.
Yeah, so. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, no, people around here we always say, right, if the Lions, the coach, the quarterback, the GM, whoever it is, right, they can run for mayor, because if they ever get this thing right, because people love the Lions so much here. And it's really head scratching, why they haven't been able to have more success over this period of time. And maybe part of it, maybe some of it is not. I mean, as I've delved into the coaching search here a little bit. Look, the last 30 years in Green Bay, there have been two guys named Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, right? So you should probably dominate the division when you have two Hall of Fame quarterbacks for 30 straight years. But, even beyond that, the Lions they've had a couple superstars themselves, Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, and they just cannot get things right.
This is your first in-season coaching search, correct?
That's right. So I covered the 2008 team. I've seen a lot of bad football in my days. I covered the 2008 team. Was with a different, paper at the time, the suburban chain of papers, Oakland Press. Went and covered Michigan for a year, Rich Rodriguez, some more good football. Came back and covered the Lions for the last decade. So, by my count, I think I've seen 3 playoff games, all losses.
Wow.
More coaches than playoff games.
I've seen 2 playoff games in my decade in the league, both losses as well. So we've got that in common. It's a tough existence. Where the Lions currently are, it's interesting because obviously they blew everything up a week ago, and now they're in this flux and trying to finish out the string. The Bears, by the same token, have the exact same record since they met in week one. They're both 4-6 since that meeting at Ford Field. They are both coming off identical score losses last week, 41-25 in high-profile games, one on Thursday, one on Sunday night. And so it's just interesting to sort of compare the misery to some extent. But where do the Lions go here down the stretch of the season? And do you see them being a feisty opponent, at least initially, with Matt Patricia out of the building and potentially having some renewed energy?
I do, actually. It's going to be tough for them to sustain anything. Their schedule after the Bears is, they play the Titans, the Packers, and the Bucks, and they close with the Vikings. But, three playoff teams the next 3 weeks. So I don't know how much of a bounce they'll get from Darrell Bevell, but I do think they'll have a little bit of a bounce this week. Darrell talked this week about just playing with more energy and having more fun on the field, and that's something that this team has really lacked the last couple of years. That Matt Patricia, the first 2 years, it was a rough go in the locker room. Last year was a little bit better. This year, I think it was better, even though we're not in the locker room to really tell.
Yeah.
But they lacked that enthusiasm, and it seemed like this season was really dragging on people. And so I do think that they'll have a little bit of a bounce this week, but it still comes down to the Jimmies and Joes, I guess, a little bit. And we don't know if Kenny Galladay is going to play. They're really shorthanded at cornerback. So, and we all know the success Mitchell Trubisky's had against the Lions in his career.
Well, there's curiosity here in Chicago because obviously Patricia has stubbornly played a ton of man coverage against Trubisky, and it's the only thing that Mitch can really beat on a consistent basis, and yet Patricia kept going back to it. And so the question is with Darrell Bevell at the head seat and whatever they decide to do defensively, maybe they switch that up and find ways to flummox Mitch.
He's been a little, Darrell's been coy about what they'll do naturally, but I did have someone tell me that you can probably expect to see a little more zone, and especially maybe given the makeup of the secondary right now. They put Desmond Trufant on injured reserve on Wednesday. Jeff Okudah is dealing with a shoulder injury. I would probably be surprised if he's going to play at this point in the week. So their top cornerbacks are going to be Amani Oruwariye, Justin Coleman, and I don't know, Mike Ford, the version, maybe Darrell Roberts comes back. I mean, there's, so really they don't have a lot of guys that can win one-on-one anyway. So it would just make more sense to play zone.
What gives you the feeling that there could be a little bit of renewed energy or at least a little bit of feistiness this weekend?
Well, I think part of it is just that players, a lot of them didn't like Matt, to be frank. I mean, and so it's not like they weren't trying or whatever, but, I think, if people were honest in that locker room, they certainly saw this coming. And when you see it coming, even though you're competitive, you want to win those games, that whole scenario just drags on you. And now look, I know Darrell Bevell had told players, hey, look, 4-7, we're 2 games out of the wild card hunt. Let's go out there and win some games and see what happens. And, everyone sees how much of a long shot that is.
Right.
But, at least you still have a little something to play for when you come in and you say, all right, this guy's treating us a little different. The schedule's a little different. And so maybe there's a little more bounce to the step this week.
The Bears have had a permanent home the last 2 Novembers and Decembers in the hunt column that is really just a charity case column for the broadcast teams to make teams feel good and their fan bases feel like they've got some hope. I looked this up, and I'm sure you've done similar research. There's been 22 teams that have fired coaches during the season since 2010. The record of the interim coach in their first game is 13-9. So there's a track record here of interim coaches coming out of the gates and doing something special and getting that jump. 7 of those 13 wins have been by double digits too, which is interesting.
See, I am writing about Darrell Bevell for Sunday, so I that's on my list of things to do. But I appreciate you saving me the research. But
I'm done for it.
I know, I appreciate it. Thanks, friend. But no, I think when you look at this situation too, that's part of it because again, there always does seem to be that bounce, right? The Lions played Raheem Morris and the Falcons in what was, I think, their first game this year. Maybe it was their second. And if not for the Todd Gurley, running into the end zone there, they would have lost that game. So, add another one to that. And look, it just from the Lions perspective, things were not getting any better. And what they really lacked, I think, was some of the resilience when things went wrong. It just snowballed on them. And maybe that was because, here we go again. We've done this so many times under Matt Patricia that it just feels like it's going to happen again. And so maybe with the new coach in charge, you get out of that mindset and you're like, all right, we can do this. It's a little different time now.
We see each other twice a year, obviously in season and multiple times in normal years at other events like the owners meetings and the combine and things that I sorely miss as we go forward. But what's your perception from that side of things of where the Bears are right now? And I'm not sure if you watched Sunday night against the Packers and how that thing unraveled on them.
I did unfortunately watch. I didn't watch all of it because why watch all of it, right? I mean, I've seen enough of those performances from the Lions over the years. I think the general perception with Chicago is that the biggest issue is the quarterback spot, and maybe not the only issue, but if that spot was solved, that this would be a good team, a really good team, a tough team to beat. And I know Bears fans probably hate hearing this, but a lot of what I think, and some of the feedback I get is still like, man, imagine if they had Pat Mahomes, just going back to that draft and that choice. So,
well, Dave, I'll tell you that next week there's a visit from Deshaun Watson at Soldier Field, and so another guy in that 2017 quarterback class, who, if you had paired him with this defense, this city might be talking about making a third run to the Super Bowl at this point.
Absolutely, and that's what I thought long about here is like, how lucky the Lions are that they don't have to play one of those 2 guys twice a year in addition to Aaron Rodgers, because Mahomes is a generational talent. And I'm going to say this for all the Trib watchers out there, that I remembered, I texted you about this a couple months ago. You were on the Deshaun Watson bandwagon from the start. That's who you wanted the Bears to get. If Deshaun Watson was in a Bears uniform, this team would be a Super Bowl contending team, I think.
I was honking that horn from the front seat the whole time. And it wasn't just a blind that, I had watched the national championship game and got enamored. The more you talk to people through the pre-draft process, they said, yeah, is the guy flawed? Sure. Does he have interception problems? Sure. But everything within the guy is all the intangibles and character and intelligence and competitiveness. And I could go on for 3 days about you would never regret the pick, right? That was the consistent theme that came up. And I wrote on draft day, I still have the little screen grab from the front page of the sports section, that 10 years from now, the Bears would regret passing on Watson way more than they'd ever regret taking him. And here we are. To that topic, as we wrap up here, Matthew Stafford's future in Detroit, not certain. He's obviously been there forever, hasn't had the level of success that maybe they anticipated and hoped for. What does the future hold for Matthew Stafford?
I think this is the biggest crossroads for the organization really since, they drafted Matthew Stafford in 2009. That whole change from Matt Millen, Martin Mayhew, they end up keeping them on staff, but new coach, new quarterback. And I could see really the same thing happen this year. I mean, ultimately, I think Stafford has another year in Detroit if he wants to be here. He played pretty coy when he was asked about that the other day. But look, Stafford is 32, about to be 33 years old. He has 2 years left on his contract, so he's going to need another big deal here in short order. He's been an Iron Man throughout his career, but he has had some nagging injuries the last couple of years. Back in 2018, the back again in 2019, a thumb right now. And the Lions are going to have probably a top 10 pick in the draft, and they wasted a top 10 pick last year. And that's saying nothing about Jeff Okudah, but sitting at number 3, you had a chance to get a quarterback like Tua or like Justin Herbert. You pass on that, and now you're in a spot where maybe you have that chance to get the guy again. To me, in the NFL, you need that quarterback to win big, to build. And so regardless if Stafford comes back in 2021 or not, I think it's important for them to find a quarterback of the future. And it's something I'm going to write about this week, Dan, actually, is I was looking at some of the potential GM candidates and how they've done with quarterbacks in the past, and maybe, how that might fit into the Lions, future.
Well, we'll be going down the same paths, looking for general managers, possible head coaches, possible quarterbacks. It's going to be some more retreads of the same thing.
I'll share my research there with you on that one then. So,
are you making the journey up to Chicago this weekend?
I'll be out there. Yep. Probably just driving in this week, but I'll be out there for the. It's interesting to see some of these road games where there's no fans, and just Darrell Bevell's first game too. So kind of want to be there and see if anything changes.
Well, I will see you in the always comfortable Soldier Field press box. I appreciate you jumping on here. What's your level of excitement, 1 to 10, for this game Sunday?
January can't get here soon enough. But look, as much as, and this, being in this business, right? You hate to see people lose their jobs, and coaching searches. I mean, they suck from a personal level, just everything you have to deal with. But I've covered a lot of bad football, including this year, and so maybe there is something reinvigorating about a different story that you're pursuing, at least. And
there's no question about that. There is no question about that. I lived through 5 Matt Barkley starts during a 3-13 season, and it just felt energizing at the end of one of those long years. So you never know where you're going to get the bump, and at least we're still covering football during all these crazy times.